didn't record. In the manner of, I feel that there's something interesting in the manner of the where the celestial energies and the actual corporal competition that occurs, where we might be able to see, a manner of outcome in this analysis. And I know that's a tricky thing because reality is always being created in the moment. That there are, many timelines, as they say, that we can um, uh, initiate and return to and uh, journey upon. So we'll just be looking at the energy of these two fires, Joshua and Usuk, and I hope I'm saying Usuk's name right. I'm not so familiar with either one of them. I have watched a couple Anthony Joshua bouts. There was a thrilling one a few years ago with Vladimir Klitschko, who's another Ukrainian fighter, where it was the fight of the year. There was a lot of drama. So with that, we're just looking at the theater of boxing. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me here at kinnekins.com. And I have a few workshops going on in October, and I'm always available for readings and consultations. So the dimensions of the approach, again, this is exercises intended to foster creative, spiritual, and archetypal recognizance through astrological examination in order to affect universal tolerance in our own lives. So, really, it's about taking in all this information, all this thought, experimenting with it, and bringing it back home to us and to the real sort of struggles that we encounter in our day to day. And so, the real fight is always in our own lives. And so we might put these, warriors on a sort of pedestal, because they are have such archetypal resonance and for our own lives. It's the same with heroes, for example, in a story. But it really, I think, in order to make the connection from within and without, it's always about taking all this stuff and applying it to our own lives and telling a story of our own lives. So this is hopefully a story from within. And I haven't made a prediction in this, but we'll say this: prediction is a utility for educational prerogative to indicate the intelligence of this work rather than an objective. So we're, again, we're not putting any money on this, and I don't have a horse in the race, really. I'm just a observer of a theatrical conflict, if you will, even though boxers die in the ring, and boxers die because of their because of their injuries later on. So there is consequence to this work, and that could be repulsive to many of us, including myself. But we're looking at the energies and just seeing where our alignment is in our awareness. So, and so we have to really, I think, and part of this is to absolutely give respect to these folks who do this, for really human entertainment. And although we're dealing with persona related to the controlled violence in the sport of boxing, this exercise is not intended to promote amusement in combat or masculine attainment through the trials of armed conflict. So this is not about, even though these are men in sport, they are. We're not talking about the advent or the apex of masculinity. through conflict. I mean, that's the story of our history that I would argue strongly that we need to surpass as a human species. And so this is, everything, everything and anything I can make can be totally and woefully inaccurate. So please take this discussion with a grain of sea salt and don't call your bookie. Okay, so you know what? And I'm just going to take a moment because I've only read about these guys, and I think this is important that we get names right. I'm just going to look up the pronunciation of who I think is Alexander Usuk, and I'm just going to do a search right here, if you don't mind.
Alexander Usuk.
Usuk. Okay.
Alexander Usuk.
Okay. I think that's important. Okay. So this is a world championship bout. I believe I don't know if it's happening in Wembley. I should have checked, but there's 60,000 people who are supposed to be there. It's a stadium event during COVID. There are both of these fellas are decorated champions, as they say. Usuk is a cruiserweight champion from the Ukraine, and he's one of the only, I believe, 4 fighters in the history of the sport to collect all 4 belts in one weight class, which is like herding cats. Anthony Joshua, who is really risen as a sort of face of the sport, especially in the UK, a really magnificent and compelling athlete, both of them, as far as I know. They are both Olympic champions I believe, in the heavyweight division. So Usuk was a cruiserweight. Let's start with him. He is from the Ukraine. He was a cruiserweight champion. So I believe that's 200 pounds. Above 200 pounds, we get into heavyweight. So still big. Compared to me, at least in height. He's from the Ukrainian amateur program, which is highly technical. Another fighter we see is Vasily Lomachenko, very, very, very technical, very creative, there's a storied program there, and he was, decorated amateur champion. So that just means that he knows his fundamentals really well. And as I said, he was the one of the only boxers in history to unite all 4 of the major belts. There's 4 different organizations, and I'm sure they're all sort of corrupt and political in their own way. And he was able to unite all 4 belts through a tournament, and he won the Muhammad Ali belt or Muhammad Ali trophy for a worldwide cruiserweight championship. And he has traveled outside of his own realm quite a bit to prove himself. He's been on the road and as I've understood, beaten many, has been undervalued in people's analysis before, and he has gone on the home turf of other people and been victorious, and he is unbeaten. So as they say, he doesn't know how to lose. yet. And then Anthony Joshua, he started boxing from at the age of 18. He's of Nigerian descent. I believe he studied in Nigeria, has lived in Nigeria, but he's London based. He is a very dynamic athlete, and he's an orthodox fighter, while Usuk is a southpaw. So Usuk's left-handed, so there are some sort of positional advantages to Usuk right off the bat. And Anthony Joshua is a orthodox fighter, and who has immense power and and has immense promise. He he's very comfortable under the lens, it seems. Even though there's a lot of pressure, there's an affability about him, and both of these guys, as you can see here, I love this picture of them at the face-off, and they're shaking hands, and giving each other respect. So I find this is like one of these events which you could root for both guys. They seem very interesting. Anthony Joshua has been beaten before. He was upset by Anthony Ruiz and lost. He holds three of the four belts right now, heavyweight belts. So there's a lot on the line. And he was knocked out a couple fights ago by Ruiz and Andy Ruiz. And it was a surprise to all. So there's a vulnerability here too. He can be hit. I would say in terms of his mechanics, there's, he's very studied and in command with, basic boxing mechanics. I mean, he beat the Klitschko, who was, I think for over 10 years was the, heavyweight champion, really, again, theatrical, thrilling bout. So, so there's some interest here. Obviously, we can look over here, and I ripped this from someone else because I didn't have time, or I would have generated one myself. We could see that there's the lower age you are, most of the time in boxing, you have an advantage there, less wear and tear. Although Anthony Joshua has had more professional fights, Usuk is new to professional boxing, but has over, I think, something like 350 amateur fights. So you can you can also think that Anthony Joshua started boxing at 18, so he has less experience, in totality, and but perhaps less wear and tear. Again, Anthony Joshua has one knockout defeat, and he has knocked out pretty much everyone he has faced. I believe Joseph Parker, a New Zealand fighter, they went to a decision that he won, and then with Andy Ruiz in the rematch, where he regained all his three belts, he won a wide decision. And so we can see, Usyk doesn't, has 13 to 18 knockouts. They both have knockout power. Usyk is 3 inches shorter, has a shorter reach, southpaw, but he is coming up from a lighter division, even 200 pounds, which is, these are massive and, strong guys. Anthony Joshua usually fights at 240. So Alexander Usyk is only fought in this division twice, but because of the rankings and because he has a storied career as a cruiserweight, he's up for the belts, as far as I know. Okay, so again, we don't have a birth time for many of these fighters. And so instead of using a noon chart or a sun on the first, and spending time doing rectification, I'm experimenting, and it worked really well for my last analysis with Pacquiao Ugas, using the Mars in the at the ascendant right here. So the reason why I'm choosing to do this, and this is all in the spirit of experimentation and of knowledge, um, is to sort of look through the Martian prism of assertion, survival complexes, desire, uh, inherent raw being. What directs our corporeal life, and we can't get any closer archetypally to that than the Martian sphere of the controlled violence in the squared circle, as they say in boxing, where there are two opponents and there will be one victor, unless there's a draw or there's utter corruption or these sort of things. So that's why I'm experimenting this, and you can see that there is this sort of absorbent diametricality that is going on already, because we have Mars in Libra, and Mars has just entered Libra. I think yesterday, or I think we're at a couple degrees in, and we think about Libra in terms of the seventh house perspective of where the first house, the inherent Martian Aries complex is of the self. What is diametrical is the other of Libra, and we house a lot of qualities here in Libra, which is friendship and commonality, equality, justice in the most exaltant ways, love, relationship. But this also can be where enemies are, or where folks who are truly oppositional to our development and stimulate a miraculous tension out of that, where we can find also partnerships in with or confrontations with qualities that we don't have, that we lack. So already right there with that Mars and Libra at the ascendant, there's some it just seems to be a story of these patterns of asserting oneself in terms of relationship, in having to prove oneself, especially with this moon in Aries that in this Martian chart is in the seventh house. There can be a lot of I would think a lot of emotional sort of need that comes out of this tension between assertion and safety in this very interpersonal sphere. Okay, so needing to prove oneself. And then we have Juno right here too, which is conjunct that Mars. So there's something, I don't know if I don't know Joshua's family history or anything, but I wonder if some of this competitiveness, right, Mars competition, comes from having to prove oneself, and also with the moon there, we might be able to ask the sun, right? He's born at a full moon, so he has a enormous presence in this lifetime already. I wonder what the familial influence, mother and father, sun and moon, traditionally has something to say about his motivation as a self. We also have Pluto in the first house, so there's a real sort of resonance of his transformational purpose. I would say this really come into his own power and come into his sense of self. I'm trying to run through this so I don't take 4 hours to do this. So forgive me. I like that in this context. I like that the mercurial in Libra, this sort of I just see this evenness of the hands in a public domain, the 12th, the ultimate transpersonal domain where the energy is just abundantly accessible. I think it's interesting that that's there, and in a trine to the North Node, in the transiting chart. So he's publicly known for his hands, and we can see that the ruler of all these planets is Venus in the second house. So, and again, in terms of this assertion of this will to survive, to be, we have the ruler being Venus in Sagittarius in the second. So this is, I just think of this as a way, as he engages his will to survive, even if it's an artifice of an actual combat, in boxing. It's a theater in many ways. There's something about the fixation of his own values and his own worth, and a real sort of expansive sort of self-confidence that can be that can locate his own truth about who he is and what his worth is. And we have Sagittarius, foreign lands. It can be very sort of philosophical in that way. This measure of checking in with where the great truths come down into the body. So again, there's this energy here for me as I look at this in proving oneself. Let's go look at some transits. I do want to see this nodal signature too. The South Node, 11th house, Leo, with a sun, the ruler being the sun in Libra in the first. I was just reading part of his biography, and he comes from Nigerian royalty, and so there may be a terrestrial incarnate story of that, but there can also be suggestions of a past life current, if we're receptive to that has to do with these tendencies of legacy, of royalty, of social prominence, in the 11th house. So it wouldn't surprise me if we looked into the records and flipped a book, and we see Anthony Joshua in a different context as someone who lived out as a royal. And then there is we're at this cross-pollination of the chart, because we're doing with a Libra rising. We should naturally have an Aries rising, and so there's this cross-pollination in the chart between all the signs. And so we have the 11th house signature of Aquarius in the 5th house, and that's his North Node. And so this is, there's something here about being coming into his own in what I would think is into his own consciousness, into his own justification, rather than a lineal one of a lineage, ancestral connection, but really using his genius and the splitting of his own consciousness open in a creative manner to produce his own legacy. And we can look at the rule of the third house with a conjunction of Uranus, Saturn, Neptune in the saturnal sign of Capricorn in the third house. So there's something about a durable legacy that is really again proving himself, but building more than that, building a durable legacy for himself, perhaps through his own journey of being oriented third house to his own environment. And we see Vesta and Hygeia here, so bringing in these there is a quest here, a quest for his perhaps his own healing of truth, and perhaps being through his own discipline and being structured and learning and being it's sometimes cerebral. There is a suggestion here for me that he's really trying to build this durable and steady and even generational complex with himself to that is a fusion of reality, Saturn, of genius, in Uranus, and the utopian ideal of oneself, and Neptune, which is the all, okay, and the etherealization. There's a lot with those outer planets there. I mean, Saturn, and the planets that we don't have eyeball visibility with in Uranus and Neptune. Although that's a lot to throw in there. And again, third house, there is something to me about the hands. So just burning through this, we're going to see that the south node is on his Venus right now. And the way my perspective of the south node is not so south node of the moon is not so as a malefic or that thing, but there is a sort of, I would sense, as a drawing away of excesses, right? And there's such an exaggerative tendency in Jupiter, right, to be big and expansive. And so there's something right here that I just see right off the bat that the ruler of his Martian sort of his Martian chart, right? There's some truth being there's some sifting going on, and so that's I think that's important to look at. Also, we have a Sun and Mars conjunct his 12th house, according to this idea of assertion and will and defense on his 12th house Mercury, and opposing, in a wide orb to this Chiron that's in his 6th, which has to do with body and maintenance, and the Neptunian traversing his 6th house, which this has to do with body. So right there, I have some questions, even though Joshua is heavily favored. I mean, if you read, everyone predicts that he's going to steamroll this fella. So I wonder if he's going to be able to, with his mercurial power and this Sun and Mars, infusion of his Mercury, and his his balance and his steadiness, because the spotlight is going to be on him in a major way. I wonder if he can kind of work through the this some of the sixth house energy that's happening that may not be so conductive to uh, bodily rhythms and adjustments and health, right? Look at six houses sometimes as a primary place of health. Chiron is squaring uh, his ascendant. I'm sorry, his midheaven. And so, there's Chiron is a very complex signature, but is he going to face um, you know, some emotional, and it's some emotional, emotional energy. Is he going to suffer from some emotional energy about who he is with that Chiron Jupiter Ceres square that transit Chiron? Is he going to is there going to be a revelation about who he thinks he is and thinks he isn't. I wonder about that. And we have also, there's this marvelous T square going on right now between, um, Mars. We can't forget, all this stuff at the ascendant, but Mars, opposes Chiron, squaring the Saturn and Neptune and Vesta and Chiron Jupiter. So there's a lot of energy there. I wonder if he is just feeling the immensity of this time. And just to look to that fourth house, if we're looking at some planets in the Cancerian archetype, Pluto and Saturn there, I would imagine there's a lot of emotional of dryness and charge and upheaval going on right now. We do have Jupiter on his north node. And as you can also see that there is a square with Uranus that sort of unifies in this strange way of Saturn and Jupiter transiting, that we're all here. We're all here right now with that. In this chain of influences. And so it just seems like high tide for him. I do wonder if I saw this in the Ruiz fight, if there is if some of the emotions will take forward this takeover, and Chiron, some of this Chiron discovery. It's a closing square that he's approaching in his Chironic journey before his Chiron return. Where if what is he going to relinquish about himself and his own genius and his own specialness to make room for more development. So it just seems like a very in terms of this prism of will and assertion, that there's a lot going on here, that the stakes are very, of course, high. They're high in every bout, and there's a lot to lose for him. His popularity, his belts, what he values himself. And so I just wonder, he's heavily favored with that Venus in South Node. I wonder what is going on. And then we have Venus transiting Jupiter, Pluto. So, and I think I have, I think I have this for now. These are, there's a big time for him. Usuk. We have he has his Mars at the in Aries, in its home sign, right? Vesta North node, right? All right there. So he's really coming into his body. South node, Jupiter. Again, this is a chart that is about the Martian aspects of life. He's really comfortable. Moon, Leo, creating a legacy for himself. It's strange. He is also, he there's a lot of Capricorn hits too, and yeah, it's interesting. Sun, we'll see this later, but he's a Sun Mercury conjunction on a day when the Sun and Mercury are going to be in conjunction. So there's something there. Neptune at the midheaven. Again, I just see this as a substantial sort of public exposure or accessibility, and that fashions his own spiritual structure, in his own ascendancy, for himself. Like there's some interplay with definitely with who he is as an authority, from the great without to the within for him. And we have Jupiter, part of fortune, according to this chart. We shouldn't even have part of fortune in here, or the ascendant, or the MC. But there's an expansive spiritual truth, perhaps, or ethereal truth, or a truth about the expansion of unity, in regards to his knowledge basis about who he is when he fights in the 12th house. We do see third house, some issues in terms of orientation, with Hygeia and Chiron there. I'd say there's some wounding here. Opposed Uranus and Saturn. A lot of their of course, their outer planets, or far-reaching planets. They're very similar. They're right on the mark, because they're born two days after each other. There is there is something there with a Uranus Saturn conjunction in the 9th house, according to this chart, where he that's going to have some resonance, between the structural parts of our life and the innovative, that are going to come to the fore tonight, because we're in this whole year-long cycle of the Saturn and Uranus square. Okay, and it has resonance now. Pluto in the 8th in Scorpio. That's a triple resonance. Again, there's a resonant need for transformation and self-assertion, legacy. Excuse me, my allergies are about to hit up. We see it can be the boss here, and that he can comprise a truth about himself in an expansive manner, and maybe this comes out of his own wounding, in his own wounding trauma. I mean, I get tired of those words too, but because I think they're not as specific. But there's something here about his upbringing that I would say that made him learn to fight and want to fight. Okay. I think I should move on, or this will be like 3 hours into the watch. Okay, so Usuk right now, that Chiron is on his North Node and his Mars. Neptune on his Jupiter. Pluto on his Sun. Saturn in the 11th house, according to the Martian chart. There's the North Node is in his second house in Gemini, of course. Sarah's Sun is Chiron, Mars in a wide conjunction to his South Node. It's squaring. So who'd you rather be? I wonder if there's an emulation, like emulate, I'm pronouncing it wrong. IMMOLATE, turn yourself on fire. With that Pluto retrograde on his sun and Mercury. If there is especially with, how we've seen the rest of our world as Saturn or as Pluto has traversed through a Saturnal sign. We've found weaknesses in in the structure of our reality, or how we compose ourselves. So maybe this is something he'll be confronting today, where the constraint of his own purpose and sense of identity, or as much maybe it's such an infusion of power in such a remarkably different way. And so I wonder if this will enliven the fury or constrict it. Saturn, Jupiter in the 12th house. They're both retrograde. What does this mean to Usuk in the world family and where he stands there? Mars at the descendant, it's his Mars opposition. How's that going to portend? I mean, he has someone in front of him who's bigger and stronger. So yeah, there's a lot to see in both of these charts where things could go right and wrong, just on a general archetypal level. And then we put Anthony's chart in the middle and overlap it with Usuk's, and just to see what's happening. So strangely, I was talking about Joshua and the South Node being on his Venus, but they're both feeling that draw of the past. And you see a lot of the outer planets are similar. So in many ways, they're similarly equipped. Usuk's South Node is on Joshua's Mars. So can he sort of, this would be an interesting thing for me. This is what I'm curious about. Does that take away some of that agency, right? Is this a battle from the past, in some way? Does that diffuse some of Joshua's, prowess? When we look at it the other way, Joshua's moon is on Usuk's North Node. It's fascinating. Okay, so I've just sort of pointed out some things. I'm working through it. I don't have any idea, and who should win this. But I do sense that Usuk, even though Joshua's like a 3-1 favorite or anything, there's ways that Joshua might be confronting himself in some ways that because this is just a gigantic endeavor to be the world champion, to be the best who's ever been. And this may be some of the expectations, that all boxers have, but Joshua fills up like stadiums with 80,000 people. And so I just wonder if there is with some of this in terms of this one part of himself, the fighter, and we know he's much more than that. Every human being is much more than that. But I wonder if there is. I would favor him as an athlete, just sort of like looking at it. But I wonder what the story is going to be of his emotions and the state of mind. That would be what I would. That's what I find most compelling about this contest. They're both at the height of their talents and careers. There's so much on the line. What's going on inside? And so I do feel that if there's those nanoseconds where Joshua finds himself tested in a way that reminds him of this prior defeat that I think just happened two bouts ago, with a smaller person, where he was winning. I believe he knocked Ruiz down, and then Ruiz let his hands go in defense and caught Joshua and knocked him down twice, and then eventually knocked him out. I wonder if some of that becomes apparent, if that becomes an emotional blister for Joshua. So that would be my prediction. The caveat would be, does Joshua encounter something at the hand of fate that is an interface with who he is, and what his who he is to be, and maybe faces some of this chironic energy. I mean, they are both right. I didn't even look at the Chiron square with Usuk. He's in there too, and that's with his hands and self. So yeah, I think that this goes for wait, but that's a sextile. So yeah, the chironic part of this, I favor Usuk, using being challenged, perhaps. I mean, he's so chironic in his own way. He's such a odd person, the way he dances, and he just seems like he dressed like the Joker the other day at the fight. What do you call it? The news conference. He's a very sort of outside the box kind of guy. And so I wonder if Usuk is going to pull this off. I mean, he has the pedigree to do it. I don't know if he has the power, but there just seems like there could be this opportunity for Joshua to go in this dark night of the soul place, and I guess we'll have to see, and see how he comes out the other side, because I do feel both men will be tested athletically. Their Martian capabilities will be tested. So okay, that's it for me. Thanks for hanging around, if you did, or catching the recording. And yeah, I have a couple workshops. They're creative workshops. They're here to provide you with really artistic directionality through astrology and cartomancy in the specific transits that are happening in October. So one, Paths of Agreement, is about Libra, and this one, Ask the Devil for Forgiveness, is about shadow integration, of course, within Scorpio. And then I'm going to start a morning Saturn series, which is for free. We'll have some astrology, mediumship, and philosophy, and be like a church service for people who don't go to church. But it will be all in the spirit of love. And again, I do readings, and hope to see you here. And let me know if you have any feedback or comments. I'd love to hear. I'd love to have discourse about these things as I develop my ideas and get to encounter the great mystery in my own way. So God bless. Thank you. And I just like to say a real quick prayer for these, for that everybody will make it out safe. This event tonight, both the fighters and the people there during this, the spectators during this time of public health crisis. So, all right. Thanks a million. Cheers.